Would you like to stage high power rockets? I'm going to show you how to do that using the simple timer with Apogee Detect from Apogee Components. Hi, I'm Tim Van Milligan. Today I'd like to go through the simple timer version 3. Now this is our product for staging rockets. I don't have a high power rocket here, but I got a smaller one. But essentially, what the simple timer does is it puts electronics in the upper stage to ignite the motor in the upper stage. So you can have a rocket that drag separates where the bottom stage comes off and it coasts a while by itself and then it fires off. This works really well in high power rockets. It looks spectacular and many people want to know how to do it. But the way to do it is you got to use electronics in the upper stage to ignite the motor. So our bottom stage is a simple stage, and it has a parachute and a shock cord in it. This kind of acts like a nose cone, but it also is a coupler to couple the two stages together like that. And then in the bottom, we have a rocket motor, and it has its own igniter in it. And for this, I'm just using a what's called a firewire igniter because it's like an E-match. It burns really fast with very little current. This rocket is designed to come apart. This rocket does not come with the simple timer. We just built this so that we could demonstrate how to use the simple timer. So the simple timer is mounted inside, and I have one here, and I can kind of show you what its features are. As I said, what's new in this version is it has two channels. So basically it can fire off two igniters at different times. The first igniter is set to a timer, and that's why it's called the simple timer, because we want the timer to detect launch and then start timing at initial liftoff of the rocket. So say we want the upper stage to ignite, 5 seconds into the flight, it detects liftoff. That's when it starts counting the 5 seconds. And then it also has, this new version of the simple timer has an apogee charge. And the purpose of the apogee charge is to fire off a parachute out of the rocket. It's like an ejection charge. And we want that because just in case the motor doesn't ignite. We've all experienced igniter failures in rockets. You push the launch button on your controller and it burns, but it doesn't fire the motor. Well, if that happens while the rocket's in the sky, there's no ejection charge to push out the parachute. So this timer has an apogee detection system in it. So it has two events. So we call it simple timer because we tried to make it as simple to use as possible. So there's new on the board are some terminal blocks that you can attach things. So down here on the bottom, and when I say bottom, I literally mean bottom because it has to be mounted vertically like this inside the rocket. And you can see that there's an arrow right here that points to up. Right there. So that has to be up. So on the bottom we have a terminal block where we can put wires, and the first one is SW, which stands for switch. So this is our on-off switch. And then next to it is the battery. So we'll connect our battery to these two terminals here. And then on the front of the board we have A, which stands for the apogee, so that's our parachute. And then T stands for the timer, which is what we want to ignite the rocket motor. There's only one switch on this timer, and that's this little button right here. It's very tiny. And it's hard to push, and we meant it to be hard to push, so it's not accidentally pushed at any time. And then right next to the switch button is two LEDs that will illuminate when everything's hooked up. So we have a switch to turn it on and off, and then we have this button to do the programming. So I'll go through that on this one right here. Let's see if I can keep this in view for you. It's going to be very hard. Okay, so I've already hooked up my battery. So here's a 1-cell LiPo battery, and it's hooked up to my battery terminals. And then on the other side, I have a push button switch. And on this rocket, it's buried inside, so it's hard to see, but I can turn it on and off by pressing a button in here to turn it on and off. And then I have on this end connected up to the timer. I have an igniter that comes out of the back, and that will go inside of a rocket engine right here. Now this rocket motor, indoors, I don't have a live motor, so this one has already been burned, so I can't burn it again. So I can set off igniters without creating problems. And then on the other side, I have an Apogee charge, and I haven't hooked up an igniter to that yet. So on this rocket, we would hook up, the igniter would go in through this hole, and then I'd have a well of ejection charge, so black powder here on this igniter. It's typical if you've ever done dual deployment. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to separate these and put them inside the terminal blocks. Okay, and then use my screwdriver. We're going to see some of the LEDs flash, and it's going to go through a specific sequence. And the sequence is described here in the instructions, and I'm going to go through it with you so you understand what's going on. So when we first turn it on, it's going to give us either a red LED light or a green one. And if you get a red one, that means there's an error the last time the timer was turned on. So it'll tell you what that error is, and on the back of the instructions there's error codes on what that red LED means. Normally you won't get that. Normally it's going to be solid green. So when I turn this one on, we'll see a green LED light up. Okay, so we got the green LED lighting up. And now it's going to go through its sequence. So now the red and the green lit up. And then it's going to continue going through the sequence of steps. It's doing a self-check and it's waiting to be programmed. And then it's going to check the battery voltage on the battery as well. And I'm going to restart it so that we can walk through this together. So I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so turn it off, turn it on. So at this point we got the green light, and now it's going to give me a red-green, which means it's in programming mode. It's ready to be programmed. But first I want to know what it was programmed the last time. So now we're going to count beeps or the flashes of the light. And so this is telling me how many seconds the timer was set at. So it's I didn't count it, so I got to start over. Actually, so whenever you get the red and the green solid, it is available for programming. So it starts out available for programming, then it's going to flash out the time that it was set at, and then it's going to be available again for programming in case you didn't want the previous time. And then after it's done programming, it's going to reflash the number of seconds it was set to, and then it's available for programming again. So that means you can continuously loop through the programming to get the time that you want on your timer. At this point, it's gone through everything, and I'm getting a red light because it's in the launch detect mode. And this timer, what's really nice about it is it will prohibit the ignition of this upper stage motor if the rocket is not within 45 degrees from vertical. So at this point, since I'm horizontal right here, I've got the red light. When I turn it vertically, now it turns green. So now it says, hey, I'm in a good position where I could fire the igniter if I detect a launch. So if I go horizontal, it turns red, and then somewhere close to 45, it will turn red. Okay, so now I'm getting red and green at the same time. I think I just disconnected my battery. All right. So I'm going to turn it off again. Okay, so now we're going to program the timer. And so I'm going to start it, and then when it gets to a solid red and green, both on at the same time, that means it's in programming. It's waiting to be programmed. And at that point, if you push the program button, it will be in a mode where we can start programming. And the programming is very simple. You're going to push the button and hold it down for the number of seconds that you want it to be timer set. And then you'll release the button. So if you wanted it for 5 seconds, you'll push the button and hold it for 5 seconds and then release. And I find it's really helpful to have your cell phone and having having the timer, because like if you set your timer, you can give it a countdown just like that, and then you know when to release it. Okay, so I'm going to have that ready for me, and I'm going to turn on the timer. I got my green button or green light, so that means it's good. Now it's going to be in programming mode, and I push the button, and so now it's ready for me to start programming. So when I push the button and hold it, that's what will program it. So I'm going to push this button and start my timer at exactly the same time. Oh, I let go of that one. So now it's telling me, it's beeping out the number of seconds. So a 10 is a 0. So it's 0, 0, and it's going to be 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. And so that's bad. So now I can push it again. So you got the red and the green. So that means I can go back and try it again. So this time I need to hold the button down instead of releasing it. So I released both at the same time. I want to release just this one and hold this one. Okay, so hopefully this will work this time. 3, 2, 1, start. Oop, I did it again. It's hard to let one go at the same time. So we'll do this one more time. Wait for it to go through its cycle. And this is why it's really nice that you can do it again and again without having to turn it on and off. So I'll just push the button when I get red and green. Okay, so now it's waiting for me to start programming. So let's do this right, Tim. Okay, so hopefully I got it at 5 seconds. I'm not sure what it was set at. So I'm going to let it go through. The next set of beeps or flashes is the battery voltage. So I should have a 0.3 point, something like 0.7 for 3.7 volts. Yep, 3.7 volts. And now it's, that flash of light was sequence number 7, which was if I wanted to test the timer to make sure that it can fire off my igniter, that would give me a red and green flash. Instead of being solid like we were going to program, it would just flash for 3 seconds. And any time that I pushed that button, it would actually start the timer. So and then at this point, I got a red light because I'm horizontal. So if I go vertical, it would turn green and it's waiting to detect launch. So I'm going to reset the timer and make sure I got my timer set correctly. So turning it off, turning it back on. Okay, so now it's waiting for me to start my timer. Let's see if I can't do this at the same time. So, okay, so I was a little quick letting it up, but I got distracted by that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure what that is. My phone, I got a text message right when I was doing the buttons. I'm going to start over. Okay, turning it on and off. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm just going to count. Okay. All right, so it's ready to program. So I'm going to count to, I'll set it at 5 seconds. So 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. So I let go. Now it should beep out the time. So it should be, I should get the first number should be 10, which is a 0. And then the next one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. So I got 5.9 seconds. And so now it's ready to be programmed again. And then at this point, it's beeping out the battery voltage. So the first one is 0, and then 3, and then it should be 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3.7 volts is my battery. And now at that point, I could start the timer and fire off the igniter to make sure it works. And then when you get the alternating flash like a policeman, I could fire off the Apogee igniter. And then at that point, now it's waiting for detection of launch. So at this point, I have it set for 5.9 seconds. And it will detect launch when it senses the right amount of acceleration of the timer. So just moving it like this is perfectly safe. It needs a hard thrust to lift off to actually start the timer. But if I wanted to test the timer, so I want to fire off the igniters just to make sure that the battery can fire them off, and that's all I can do. I can do that by turning it off, and we'll do that in just a second. But let me first say that it doesn't do any continuity test on your igniters. So a lot of people want that feature, but it's not in this simple timer. All right, so we're going to do a testing of the igniters. So after it goes through the programming mode and after the battery voltage, we're going to get, and this is sequence 7 in the description, where there's a timer test. And when I push the timer test, when I get a red and green flashing together, it will start the timer, and then it will start counting down with the red light, and then it will fire off this igniter. And then after that, I'm going to get the red and green alternating like a policeman. And if I push the button at that point, it's going to immediately fire off the Apogee charge. Okay, so let's turn it on, turn it off, and we'll do that. Okay, so turning it on. Okay, so we got to wait for the battery voltage. So, okay, so here's entered programming mode, and now it should display our seconds. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5.9 seconds. And then it's ready for programming mode. And now it will go through the battery voltage. Okay, here's 3.7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now we're going to get the two together, and I can push it here. Okay, so now it's counting down, and it's going to, when it gets down to 0, that one's going to fire off. And now I got the red and the green together like a policeman. And if I push it, I missed it. I didn't push it at the right time. So now it's waiting for Apogee. So if I wanted to fire off that Apogee, I'd have to do it again. Or my igniter's bad, which is totally possible because these are homemade, home-dipped igniters. We'll try it again. So now this one's already fired, but it's waiting for programming. This is telling me my time. Okay, next will be battery voltage, or it's waiting for programming, and then battery voltage. Okay, so that's the timer, and next one will be for the ejection charge. Here it was, and it worked. At this point, I would, replace the igniters, and we're ready to put in, fresh igniters to fire, to do the actual launch. Now, if you're doing small motors like Quest motors, those are harder to ignite. And then the other issue is the igniter has to go into the nozzle. These have smaller nozzles, and even the Firewire Minis, they won't go inside. For those, you have to use the First Fire Juniors or the First Fire Micros, which will allow it to go inside through the nozzle. The problem with these is these take 6 volts to ignite, and I've only got 3.7 with this particular battery. So if I wanted to do a Quest motor or any composite motor with an Aerotech that's made by Aerotech, I need to switch out this battery and use a 2-cell battery, which has 7.4 volts. So it's greater than 6 volts, which should be enough to ignite this off. So if I replace this battery here, and I got a pigtail here. I'll take both these igniters out because I've already used them up. Okay, so I'm going to hook this up into here. And this is polarity sensitive, so I need plus to plus and minus to minus. This little rocket that I'm holding, we developed specifically to test timers like the simple timer. Because a lot of times you want to make sure your electronics is working before you commit to doing it in a high power rocket. So we created this little rocket, and we actually call it TTV, which is Timer Test Vehicle. This will be a kit eventually. The graphics will be different from what you see here. But we wanted to have a small rocket where people can make sure all their electronics works before they put it into a high power rocket. Okay, so that's hooked up there. Okay, I got it turned on. Let me turn it off. And we will hook up a Quest igniter. We'll put it on the timer circuit. Okay, so I have my Quest igniter hooked up. I got the 2-cell LiPo battery hooked up, and that would also fit right there. And I can turn on my timer. And again, it's going to go through the same sequence, and we'll start the timer when it gets to the right spot. And then we'll fire that off. So that's the programming mode. Now it's going to go through the battery mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I should get the red and the green. I can press it. How come it didn't start? Oh, it's waiting for I just reprogrammed it. To reset the program. I pushed it at the wrong time. One, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2.9 seconds. I can reprogram. Now we should be battery voltage. So this one should be higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. 1, 2, 3, 8.2 volts. And if wanted to fire that off, not enough juice. So that's why it's good to double check to make sure you can fire off the igniter that you choose to use with the specific rocket motor. Okay, so that is the simple timer and how to program it. It's a lot easier to do than I made it because I was trying to explain it at the same time. When you're trying to teach somebody, you always screw it up. But the sequence of flashes is right here. It's easy to program. It's You'll find it in the instructions right here. So this is the Simple Timer version 3 with Apogee detection from Apogee Components. Our web address is www.apogeerockets.com.